We're early, so we're gonna see. We should be. We're live. We can see what we look like.
I think I'm just gonna not look at that.
Yeah, so you see a little bit more on there than this, but it still looks good.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yep.
Where my candles at?
It's good.
Boom. You laughing at me?
You haven't even gotten up yet, so there's like.
That's okay.
Okay. I'm not laughing at you. Just your boom.
All right. We're here. Hello, everybody. If you're in the chat, it says we got two people. It's probably me and my wife. Just trying to see what this looks like here. Making sure the audio works good. I believe we're good. Got it live on the computer here. Live on that. I'm going to share it. All right. Says audio's good. I believe the audio's good.
Okay.
We're going to take this. All right. Says audio's good. I believe the audio's good. We're going to take this. I think that's a little loud.
Yeah, I thought it might be picking it up a little bit. Yes, it is. Can definitely hear it.
Says audio's good. I believe the audio's good. We're going to take this. I think that's a little loud.
Yeah, I thought it might be picking it up a little bit. Yes, it is. Can definitely hear it. Yeah, I thought it might be picking it up. Yes, it is. Can definitely hear it.
All right, so we're just going to go for it.
Okay.
Should be good. Let's just echo.
Okay.
So, welcome to our first live YouTube Repentance, Redemption, Reflection. It has been a back and forth here lately with the just technological aspect of it, getting the cameras figured out, getting the lighting figured out, making sure everything's where it needs to be. And it's actually, I believe that we finally have it where it needs to be. Once we start getting a couple people in here, they can start to let us know what it sounds like, how it sounds, But I believe everything should be on the up and up, and we will find out soon. So where we left off the last time was my testimony from being born till through high school, right?
Yes.
And then with you, it was just through like 13.
I just got to 12.
Just got to 12 or 13. All right. So now what we're going to do is start with you from 12 until
When we get
there, and then we will go from there to our combined couples testimony.
Okay.
So from 12 till 20.
We'll just go.
Let's go.
Okay.
All right.
So where I left off, 12 years old, we were discussing, the last part of it was that I had an opportunity to share with my parents what was going on, and I didn't take it.
Right.
So for about, I'd say for about a year, everything was good. Maybe 2 years, everything was good. And then I still was getting in a lot of trouble, just with my family. I was lying all the time, doing like little petty things, like stealing like little things.
Okay.
So I was constantly in trouble as a youth. And I'd say around 14, that's when I ended up engaging in another sexual interaction with somebody who was a family member. It just happened one night when I was sleeping. And so that began after I thought that everything I was going through previous to that was over and done, that I was just going to move forward.
Right.
That picked up. But it was just, it was as if I just deserved, or that I was asking for the stuff to happen to me.
And what gave you that mindset? Like you just deserved it?
Or I would say because I just thought that I must be putting off something to make people think that I want them to do something to me, or that I deserve to be hurt somehow in this way, in this form. So I actually, just kind of submitted again to what was happening, and the desire, the lust, the mindset of not having the maturity, like we were speaking before, of understanding what was actually going down. And this was constant contact.
Right.
And so again, it's just, I know that at that age, I was just acting out to get the attention from my parents without even expressing or knowing how to really, truly express what was happening throughout my childhood.
Okay.
So I just, again, continued to be the black sheep of my family.
Right.
Constantly in trouble, never getting good grades, always grounded. We got whooped.
Right.
I
Yes.
mean, we got whooped.
As most of us did in that time.
I mean, and that's the thing, like it didn't work for me because it wasn't setting in my mind to not be in trouble,
Right.
like to change my way or to change my way of thinking. So that happened for about 2 years. And then I actually ended up having one last family member who also engaged, but I was fully aware and fully accepting to engage along. And I was probably, I would say 15.
Okay.
This person was much, much, much older than me.
Right.
So, and then I didn't care what was going on, because at that point in my life, that's all I desired. That's all that I had inside I was very lustful.
Right.
Like, I desired that feeling of that sensation and that desire, because I thought that's what I was supposed to be doing.
Right.
Because I felt like that was a way of being loved and showing love.
Okay.
So I didn't have a deep understanding or the development of what love was.
Right.
So from then on, it was like I had to hold on to everything that was happening and that had happened to me. And at this point, I had not touched drugs. I had not touched alcohol. So at 16 years old was the very first time I had ever drank anything.
Okay.
Surprisingly.
Right. So nothing before that. No drugs, no
No.
drinking, no nothing.
You know, my family was in church during this time.
Right.
But I wasn't like, my parents were not drinking. My parents weren't doing anything. So that was previous to them going and finding church. My parents actually stopped drinking and stopped, they did whatever they were doing.
Right.
But so that stopped while we were attending this church. And then we actually went to private school up until the middle of my 10th grade year.
Okay.
We got taken out of that school. Me and my two younger siblings got taken out of that school and put into public school. So that was like a complete shock to me.
How long were you in private? All the way private school?
No, I went to public school and elementary school up to 3rd grade. So
Okay.
4th grade until the middle of my 10th grade year.
Okay.
So to be popped into the middle of a public school where I was only allowed to wear skirts and dress shirts at school. So that's pretty much all I had.
Mm-hmm.
But then I realized how much freedom at school I had, how much more interaction with females and males and different worldly things that I, just kind of latched on and followed into.
Right.
It's peer pressure. It's just like you want to fit in, and I was not a person to fit in.
Right.
Like, I didn't fit in anywhere. I was my own unique person, but I got along with everybody.
Right.
But I had a hard time, in high school, before I even engaged with anybody in high school, I was already labeled as something that I wasn't even, I wasn't out there putting myself out there at that point.
Right.
But then it got to that point where I was like, okay, well, if you're just going to label me, might as well just live up to it, kind of thing. So, I mean, I did start to drink a lot. I did start to become sexually active. And the first year in high school, that was just, it was like 11th grade. That's where everything started to turn around, like where I started to really like go out. I didn't go to parties because my parents never let me go to parties.
Right.
It was like I was going to spend the night with friends, and then we would go, down into the pit and we would drink.
Right.
And then we always had one friend who would drive us around.
I got you. Right.
So
the older one that hooked everybody up.
No, she was the same age as us. She just didn't drink. So, but yeah, so it was a lot was happening during high school years.
Okay.
Because like I said, it was just like a shock because I just was taken out of private school into this small country school. And so after I started drinking and engaging more with people, going out, my 12th grade year, I ended up getting pregnant with Caitlin, my first. She's 23 years old now.
Right. So senior year in high school.
Senior year in high school.
You get pregnant.
Walked across my graduation at 5 months pregnant.
Okay.
So
Did you let people know that you were, like, as soon as
Oh,
you
yeah.
found out?
no, not as soon as I
Right. Well, I'm
found
just saying,
out.
like, I'm pregnant.
No, I didn't let my parents know.
Right. So when did that happen? Do you remember that, like, time?
yes.
Well, I'm sure you do.
Yes,
That has to be, like, engraved in your head.
it is.
Right.
My mom obviously was the first one because my mom is the one who bought me the pregnancy test on the way home from work.
Okay.
I told her I was like really sick because
Right.
I had morning sickness so bad.
But mom knew.
But mom was like, we're going to get a pregnancy test. So
Right. And how old are you?
I'm 16.
16 years old. Just graduated high school.
No, I'm still in high school.
Okay.
I'm in my senior year.
Okay.
So this was about the beginning of December
All
when we found out that I was pregnant.
So when you found out at 16 that you're pregnant and you're in high school, what goes through your mind once you're like, oh man, I'm pregnant? What does that look like?
It all growing up, you know, like I said, I had 5 siblings and we were all very close. So, you know, I wanted to be a mom, just did not want to be a mom at such a young age. So it was a terrifying experience to find out that I was pregnant at 16 because not only was I terrified, I was petrified to tell my dad.
Right.
And I was like, there's no way I can tell my dad. My mom just like was like so upset because my mom was also a very young mom. You know, she had 3 kids before she was 22 years old.
Right.
But she was also
So
married.
she kind of,
So she knew, and she always wanted better for her children, of course, and as we all do. However, you know, I remember that conversation, you know, with my mom, just like, what am I going to do? And she, you know, she was like, well, we need to tell your father. It was like, we cannot tell dad right now. Like, we have to put it off. And so I put it off as long as I could. And I actually spoke with a family member, and we had everything planned out to actually have an abortion.
Okay.
So I was...
And that was that from the fear of the responsibility?
It was a mix of everything. I just knew I was not ready to be a mom.
Right.
I mean, everything that I was experiencing at such a young age, that I knew that I was not developed and I was nowhere near needing to be a mom.
Right.
So I was a day before going, we had to go to Baltimore to do it. It was not a service that was offered in that area.
Right.
So we would have to drive to Baltimore. I had only told my mom
Okay.
at this point still. So my family member who was going to take me was the only other person who knew besides my mom. That same day that family member came to pick me up, to take me, because I was just going to stay up there until
Right.
everything was done. They came to my house, and my dad took me upstairs
Right.
and sat me in my bedroom and said, your mom told me, and why didn't you tell me I was going to be a grandfather? And I was like, oh my gosh. So, you know, that was like an emotional roller coaster because I was like,
You thought he was
I
gonna rip
already
into you.
knew that he knew, since we were going to have to go and have a sit
Right.
down or whatever. I knew that he knew. So, you know, that really was, it was a relief
Right.
to know that my dad was supportive of me. But it was still very fearful. So I stopped everything. I stopped drinking. I stopped smoking cigarettes. I stopped smoking.
Now, was that difficult to stop, or did you stop
No.
because you're like, I have a purpose, I have a reason not to now? So did that, right? Like, was it difficult for you to stop drinking and smoking, or you're just like, no, I'm done?
No, it was not difficult at all for me to stop doing everything. So I really, you know, was excited and I was ready, I was getting myself prepared. All during this time, my parents were actually preparing to move out of the house that I grew up in.
Okay.
Because they had bought the house where they live now.
Right.
So it was just, they were going to leave me the house, like to live in there, and I was going to pay rent and be on my own. So a lot of responsibility was, coming my way.
Right.
I was just about to graduate high school. So everything just moved forward. There wasn't a lot of issues during,
Okay.
pregnancy. Everything was pretty good. So fast forwarding, Caitlin comes, and man, I had no idea what postpartum depression was.
Right.
I was, for 2 whole weeks, just bawling my eyes out. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea. And my parents are gone, but my parents are still coming to see me. And a woman who was a very big part of my life, I called her Mama. She came and stayed with me for like almost a month to help me, adjust having a baby.
Right.
And so it was very nice to have somebody. But I mean, every single time I held my baby, it was like, I just was so in love with her.
Right.
But I was so depressed.
Okay.
I was just crying about everything. So on top of being depressed, not ever dealing with my emotions, all of this trauma that had happened to me previous, not understanding, never walking through it, holding it inside. I think it was just, there's so much change that goes during a pregnancy that you just never really realize what's happening to your whole entire system. And now you have this being in front of you that you have to take care of and you have to raise. And so everything was going pretty good.
And at this point, baby dad is nowhere to be found?
He was not there, no.
Okay.
He was not there. And that was okay.
Right.
That was okay.
We're good.
There was, there was very large amounts of denial, toxicity, alcohol, it was just, it was bad. So
Okay.
it was a good thing that he was not there.
Okay.
So moving on, my parents really helped me a lot. I still worked, and I worked all the time. And so my parents would keep Caitlin a lot, and they would allow me to feel like I have a life. One of my brothers moved in, and that really helped out too, just having family inside the house and raising Caitlin. And they became very supportive of everything also. So it was everything was moving in the direction that I thought it was good.
Right.
But then I started smoking weed, and I started drinking again. And this time it was different because it was just that I just lost feeling. Like I just felt like I just didn't care, and I didn't care about myself. I didn't care about my body. I didn't care about Caitlin. It got to that point where eventually just things were starting to take over, and I'd go out more. And, again, my parents gave me lots of freedom I'm not blaming them. Right. They were assisting me in allowing me to go out and enjoy myself. Right. So I just got in with the wrong crowd. Because
at this time still you're only like what, 18, 19?
18.
Right. Okay.
I'm 18. So I start to really kind of go out more 19 years old.
Okay.
And it starts to get into the wrong crowd. And the alcohol turns into drug usage. So 18, 19, there was a bar that under 21, 18 could go to.
Right.
Under 21, you weren't able to drink or whatever.
Right.
So I'd find myself there very often around really not so great people,
Right.
much older people. And so that's where I started to develop my harder drug use. I started off doing ecstasy, and I would do that every other weekend,
Okay.
the weekends that I didn't have Caitlin. And then it turned into cocaine, and I would do that a lot more often than the weekend.
Right.
And eventually, by the time I was 20 years old, 20 years old, I had literally just basically handed my child off to my family because I wasn't showing up for her. I wasn't taking her to school. I was partying at my house by myself,
Right.
I was at 20, I ended up starting to smoke crack.
Okay.
So I found myself just numbing absolutely every part of me that I possibly could. And that was the only things that were working. It just got worse,
Right.
every single time, because eventually everything just wore off and it wasn't doing what it was supposed to be doing,
Right.
which was quieting my mind, which was taking away from everything that I've ever not faced or dealt with in my life at that point. So here I am, 20 years old, and just basically just here. I can't do this anymore.
Right.
I don't want to do this anymore is the mentality. I was not a good mom. I cared about myself and my drugs too much. So luckily I did have my family. And luckily Caitlin did have my family to help
Right.
keep her so she didn't end up going into a system, because eventually she would have probably
Absolutely.
found herself there.
Right.
So it was a challenge for, my family to see me like this and know what I was doing to myself. But I didn't care. I didn't care
Right.
about how it affected my mom, because I know that my mom really, it hurt her hard, because she, like I said, herself had lots of demons that she was battling
Right.
too. And to know that your child's out there basically just killing herself or, suffering, that it is one of those things that I know my mom prayed night and night after and for me. So that's up to about 20 years old. I eventually just signed over all my rights to my brother and my sister-in-law, and they raised Caitlin for forever.
Right.
So, and that was really hard for me to ever get through and to really forgive myself for.
Right.
And that was even before I found God, like trying to forgive myself for what I did for her and what I did to myself all through those years and then the years to follow. So yeah, that's, what was that?
It's 12
12
through
to
20.
20.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a lot.
Right. I think it was just it's a lifetime within 10 years. So you even go from like the beginning of the testimony to where it was like the experiences from you. And I've been told the same, like my experiences too, has been like you've experienced so much stuff that has just been crammed into a decade, which some
Right.
people either don't experience at all or the benefit of experiencing it later in life. So there's more of a comprehension level to it. That is a bit, I guess if there was a benefit to any kind of turmoil, depending on when you experience it, the older and the more I guess it's a double-edged sword, because if you're younger, you can't process it. So it kind of just, and it depends on what you experience. I said this to somebody the other day, like we can have the same experiences. Like, yes, we went through the same thing, but we didn't experience it the same way. Like what my mom died, your mom died. However,
Right.
we handled that completely differently because we are two completely different people. So
Right.
yes, we have that kinship of losing a mother. However, the way that it's handled, the way that we internally deal with these things is
Right.
completely different. And I learned that, and how we will liken our pain to somebody else's and take that as a way to relate to people, but just knowing that just because we experience the same thing doesn't mean we experienced it in the same way.
Yeah, I like breaking it down even a little deeper than that, is it not even experience, because it's all emotion. It's
Yes.
all anger, grief, fear, sadness. It's the same emotion. We all go through the same emotions. It's how we react and how we take on that emotion and how we handle those emotions.
Right.
So it's, I think that is a good way to look at it. But it also, going back to your point, that it depends also on the age that
Right.
that these things that you're going through. Because those are 2 decades of my life that were supposed to be my developmental
Absolutely. Yes,
decades.
absolutely.
And now I'm just like, bam,
Right.
all of this emotional trauma and
Yeah.
distress and anger and
Yes.
confusion just piled right on
Right.
top of you.
Absolutely.
So,
See, if you go from, so that's up until 20, right? So if we're switching it out, we stopped to where I was 20 and I think where we left off last was, I forget where we left off last.
I think
with
you
me.
were coming back from,
Was it Texas?
no, you didn't come back to Texas until what? You were 25?
No, I'm saying I'm coming back
Oh.
from Texas. Is that where we left off from last time? Was when I was living in, well, we'll just start so we're not going back
Well,
and
you
forth.
did say that you were with Crystal and Corey. With
Right.
Them.
So we'll do mine from, we'll do 20 to 30 because then right then's where we
Yeah.
met. So
Yep.
you're
was
you're older than me. So
It was my 30th birthday.
right, it was the 30th birthday when we met. So if we go from in my 20s, I was in Houston. When I left Houston because of the trouble I was getting to in the neighborhood I was living in, my uncle and them found out about it via my sister. And when they heard from my sister and they heard about the situation I was in, they moved me out to Virginia, living with my Uncle Guy. So when I moved out here, I moved in with my Uncle Guy. And throughout that time, I moved in with him. I got a car. I got a job working with my cousin Jessica at the Longhorn Steakhouse in Chantilly. She was a waiter, and